Yes, we're talking about urethane, and yes, I know that's a surprise, but there's some very important points to make here. I think urethane is pretty misunderstood, and I'm going to expand on what I talked about in my Sport Essentials video. Thanks, of course, for watching. This is my in-depth for the pitch black. The first thing to note here is that we're on the 2019 USBC Open Championship singles and doubles pattern here, and there hasn't been a lot of traffic on the lanes. I threw the UFO for about 6 to 7 shots in this area of the lane, and then the physics for 6 to 7 shots, so virtually nothing. Definitely not enough to do anything to a pattern that's over 28 mils. This is a brand new, fresh, pitch black, never been thrown, comes out of the box with 1000 grit, and anyone who throws urethane knows that it needs a good handful of shots in practice to get some oil on the ball and settle it down. If you ever just take a fresh urethane ball out of the bag and try to throw it during competition, it's going to stop and go left for 4 to 5 solid shots before it calms down and starts doing urethane things. We've seen several shots here where it's super crazy strong to start with and then it settles down. This drives home the most important part, that urethane is not for dry lanes. Never has been, never will be. Urethane can be used on dry lanes because it's very smooth, so just because it doesn't move big on the back end, people get the misconception that urethane is a dry lane ball. This is a 28.4 milliliter 42-foot pattern, and if you saw my UFO videos, it's the strongest resin ball on the market right now. It comes out of the box at 2000 grit, and it didn't hook as early or as much as the pitch black did for the first handful of shots. Now, because urethane has a virtually non-existent absorption rate, the oil doesn't get into the cover. It gets onto it and is spread around, so that really helps tame it down. So now we went from super crazy strong to really not a whole lot. However, now that we've got a solid amount of shots on it, got some oil on the cover, and readjusted what I was doing, it gets really nice. There's traction, no overreaction whatsoever, and at this point I'm just walking it in. It completely mitigates the friction at the end of the pattern, and this is the ultimate point of urethane. Not a dry lane ball. It's for heavy volumes in the front and controlling quick or strong back ends. It works on really any length of pattern because it does what it's going to do regardless. It's amazing on shorter patterns because it doesn't scream off the end of the pattern like typical resin does, but it's also pretty solid on this longer pattern here because it still digs in and walks into the pocket. The drawback of urethane, of course, is the lane transition it causes. Traditional urethane creates a large amount of carry down, not because it's urethane specifically, but because the cores in those traditional urethane balls are typically lower flaring. Urethane balls are usually run with a lot of surface on them, 500 grit, 1000 grit, so they'll pick up a lot of oil as they go down the lane, and because they have lower flaring cores, they roll over the same oil track all the way down the lane. It used to be a big thing back 30 years ago when someone would have a track on their ball the size of a dime or the width of a dime, because that meant that they were pretty accurate and pretty consistent. Now at the end of the lane, a fair amount of that oil is left on the back end because the ball continues to roll over that same track. Now in the case of bigger flaring urethane balls such as the Hot Cell or Black Widow urethane, it's not nearly as big of a concern. They'll still create some carry down because the ball will deposit a bit of oil on the back end as it rolls over the bow ties on the ball, but not nearly as much as traditional urethane because carry down is based more on flare amount than cover type. Now a higher flaring urethane ball will still cause more carry down than a higher flaring resin ball, but not a significant amount. When used correctly, urethane can be incredibly effective and devastatingly so, as it does things resin just can't do. We've seen a lot of urethane on TV, specifically the pitch black in the hands of our staffers and the purple hammer in the hands of the EBI staffers, and whether short or long, the PBA patterns all contain higher volumes of oil. Urethane is best used to control wet, dry, and blend the pattern better than literally anything else can. Thanks for watching.